Kara Shalom, welcome to our watercolor journey. Today you will learn how to use cauliflowers to your advantage. The materials used are listed in the description below. On the palette we have Phthalo blue, red shade, raw sienna, rose madder, cadmium yellow, light red and sepia. The canson paper is taped to a flatboard. Heinrich uses the flatboard because he wants to control the flow of the paint. He uses a spray bottle to lightly spray the picture plane. He uses the Raphael Petit Gris Pure No. 9 to start painting the sky. He starts with phthalo blue and he uses water to spread the paint. He adds a touch of raw sienna and works it into the paper, but notice that it gives a slightly greenish hue when mixed with the blue. He adds some rose madder to neutralize the greenish tint, and it gives a lovely grey purple in the sky. He builds the sky with the different colors on the palette. He wants to create a cloudy effect, so he blends the paint on the paper. Although he's working wet in wet, he doesn't want an excessively wet surface. The damp surface helps with the control of the paint. If it's too wet, the paint will simply spread everywhere and it would be more difficult to control. He controls the moisture only with the water in his brush. The stronger pigments are used at the top, and as he moves down on the picture plane, the colors become lighter. This creates depth and distance. When you are satisfied with the sky area, let your painting dry naturally. It's best to keep it lying flat so that the colors don't spread into each other some more. He uses the Rosemary and Company Pure Squirrel No. 0 brush to paint the roofs of the houses. He doesn't paint distinct houses, it's only suggestions. The roofs and the outline of the walls will give the viewer the idea of houses in the distance. Use some color variation for the roof. He starts with light red as the base layer for the roofs and then adds a touch of phthalo blue to create variation in some of the roofs. This makes the houses a bit more interesting. If you are not comfortable with painting in the houses in freehand, then you can draw some rough outlines before you start painting. He doesn't clean his brush and he picks up some raw sienna to start with the middle ground. It looks a bit redder than pure raw sienna because there is still a bit of light red on his brush. He establishes a baseline or a ground area for the houses. Now he's going to paint a larger area, so he switches to the Rosemary & Co. Pure Squirrel No. 6 brush. He works wet on dry. Again, he uses all the colors on his palette to create the foreground. He doesn't clean the brush and allows the colors to fuse naturally. As you add the pigments, it starts to create a wet on wet environment. So the colors will fuse into each other. Notice that the phthalo blue gives you a very bright green, so be careful with it. Closer to the foreground, you need warmer colors, so he uses raw sienna and light red here. The paper is now a bit damp, not wet anymore, and he adds a few drops of clean water to force some cauliflowers. Yes, they can be useful as they can create interesting textures. Just be careful with the amount of water you drop in. Too much water can ruin your painting. It is useful to wait until the paper has dried a bit. Damp paper creates more interesting cauliflowers than wet paper. The pigments get pushed away in a more controlled manner on the damp paper than when the paper is completely wet. It creates quite interesting shapes. Let the painting dry completely. He uses the Art Secret No. 2 mop to wet a small area above the horizon line. He mixes a blue-green with a phthalo blue and cadmium yellow to start with the trees behind the houses. He dabs in a bit of the other colors from the palette to create variation. The paint spreads naturally because of the wet surface and creates beautiful soft lines and natural-looking trees. Remember to work very lightly with the tip of the brush. Don't fiddle too much. He adds some light red to give a bit of warmth to the horizon line, and it makes for an interesting variety in the trees and bushes. The warmer color also pushes the blue-green bushes further to the back. Now you have some dimension in your middle ground. Let the painting dry again. Make sure the paper is completely dry. Now he works wet on dry. He wants to see what would happen if he adds a mountain now. He mixes some phthalo blue with rose madder to create a soft purple. He uses that to paint the mountain in the background. Working wet on dry will create a clear, hard line for the mountain, which contrasts nicely with the soft haziness of the bushes. You don't always have to paint the mountains first. He paints the mountains just above the tree line and leaves a distinct white space between the tree line and the base of the mountains. This is why he works wet on dry here. If it was wet on wet, the purple would have blended with the greens in the middle ground. Create variation in the color of your mountain by using raw sienna and light red here and there. Notice how the houses now seem even closer to the front. All these techniques and layers give beautiful dimension to your painting. He creates a neutral gray to paint the fence post, using the smaller rosemary. Keep this random. Don't try to make them precise. It seems to be the norm to have uneven numbers when you paint in certain objects. Apparently, it's more pleasing to the eye then. He creates a darker green with a phthalo blue and cadmium yellow for the suggestion of trees behind the houses. These are painted wet on dry, so it makes hard lines. Again, it stands out against the softer background. He drops in some dark color for the suggestions of windows and doors in the houses. He uses the Princeton Neptune #1 rigger to draw the trees. The two trees in the background are far away, so they are lighter and less detailed. He uses the tip of the brush and quick light strokes to add some fine tweaks to the ends of the branches. This makes the bare tree look fuller. He uses the natural lines created by the cauliflowers to add some bushes and grass to the foreground. For the trees in the front, he uses a stronger mix of sepia. These trees are prominent, so they need to be darker and more detailed. He draws the tree in the bottom third of the picture plane and extends it to the top third. It is more visually pleasing if you apply the rule of thirds in your composition. He adds this tree to balance the composition. Always remember to ground all the objects in your painting so it doesn't look like they are floating on a bed of nothingness. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and let us know in the comments if you found these tips and techniques helpful. You are welcome to share your paintings with us on Instagram. Thank you for watching. We hope to see you soon. Vaya con Dios.